Hi, everybody. I think we have a few minutes, or not a few minutes, a few seconds before the top of the hour. So we'll just wait. I'm in Whitefish, Montana, with my oldest and best friend, um, Diane. I um, I think I thought a lot about what I wanted to talk about today, and there was a very specific thing I wanted to talk about Friday after we finished our Facebook Live group, our attempt. I I wanted to make sure this week I talked about a very specific thing. I didn't know that that very same day I would lose Lily to the physical world. However, it's interesting how the theme is the same. It's just deeper and broader and more rich, perhaps. My whole life, pretty much from the day I was born, my brother sent me a video of me when I was 3 years old. It's very humorous because in the video I'm talking on the phone, which of course is what I do for a living now. I'm 3, right? And then in another section, you put these sections of old videos my dad did of me together, and in the another picture, there is me writing on a chalkboard. So I was already doing my work, preparing, practicing my work, and when I was 3 years old. It was quite amazing. But I remember my room when I was 3 years old, up until I was 3, actually. I don't think I got ill when I was 3. Um, and then spent a few years with my parents wondering if I was going to make it. But before I was 3, I have a tremendous amount of memory. I mean, before that moment, I have a tremendous amount of memory, visceral, sentient, tactile, odor, taste memory, and everything from remembering pulling myself up on my crib, which we think of as about 8 months old because of the way I felt my body and the way I remember pictures of myself, to my room. And back then you didn't have plastic furniture or plastic things, and my dad made me a room that was my size. Made me doll beds and little kitchen sinks, and but I remember being in my room, and I remember how real it was. I remember the feel of the dolls, and Betty Ann and Queen Anne, and I remember their animatedness. I remember they were alive, and my stuffed animals. And most children lose that memory. Their neural wiring reorganizes itself into a more socialized way of perceiving. But I remember with great detail the realness of my room. And there was a dog, a Scotty dog. His name was Mickey McTavish. And Mom and Dad got him 6 months before I was born. Yeah, 6 months before I was born. So I was basically raised with Mickey McTavish, this little feisty Scotty. And we were one. There was no sense of human and animal. There was no sense of human in doll. There was no sense of human in wood table. It was a kingdom, a realm, and we were all alive in it. We were all one. And strangely enough, I never lost that. I got very, very ill. I was ill a lot from the day I was born, but I got really, really ill when I was 3. They didn't think I'd live. And then something I don't know about after that Duke University Hospital kept me alive somehow. I don't know how. I was too young to know, and my mother got rid of all the records later on. But after I began to socialize, after when my mind began to organize for participation with young humans, small beings like myself, it really didn't take. It's the only way I really know how to talk about it. It just didn't take. I felt foreign to the kids around me. And I had friends. I had Sandra on one side and Kay on the other side, and they were okay somehow, because they were sort of part of my play as I grew older, part of the animation of life, and for people that are close to me, they know that about me. I'm always at play, not play like distraction or play like a substitute for life, but the play of life. So, but I always had my creatures. Muffet was my next love, who basically saved my butt. She died when she was 21. Mickey died when I was 16. But the point is that I come from a realm of reality that I don't find in other human beings. And it's very creature-centric. In my lifetime, for those who've been around me, you've heard some of my stories. You've heard the story of when I was driving from Ohio to Washington, D.C., or Tennessee, actually. I stopped in State Park in Virginia, and because a deer was staring at me, and I rolled down the window, and the deer walked up to me and literally put her nose on my nose. Promise, not a lie. Scared the bejesus out of me. Female deer, a doe. But I remember seeing the clock out of the corner of my eye on my car, because I wasn't going to move. I didn't care. I wasn't going to move. I knew that kind of thing didn't happen. And I was going to look in her eyes forever, and every now and then dart my eyes to the clock I don't know why, I just wanted to see how long it would last. But I wasn't going to move. That was for sure. If it lasted forever, I wasn't going to move. And at a car, you could hear a car in the distance, and she bolted away. But what was significant about that event, when I was in college at Indiana University, a squirrel used to come sit on my book while I was studying. So it really is real. This is something I have history. It's in my history. And that day that deer happened, I learned something about the phenomenon of the creature kingdom, because unbeknownst to myself, because it was probably the first real wild kingdom thing that had happened to me. I was very altered, very, very, very altered, in a very altered state. I am this morning too, which I find interesting. But in that altered state, I could hear a waterfall, and that bond, that looking in that doe's eyes and her looking into mine, it took me out beyond the limitation of the socialized human being. And I remember it. I mean, it's memory like you can't shed it. It's so part of your cells. It's so part of the fabric of your soul. So I became entranced with the waterfall because the unbelievable delicacy of the sound of the water and the incredible glistening of the water and how it overtook the chatter of all the human beings that didn't even see it really. They were walking, but they were talking about their day and where they were going to picnic. But this sound was louder, more alive, more real, more compelling than the humanity around me. And unbeknownst to me, I woke up on the path to the waterfall. I guess human beings had just been stepping over me. I have no idea how long I slept, because my human socialized form just didn't have the capacity to be in the netherworld of reality without collapsing, without going to sleep, without having to shut down. And I got in my car, and I had rented a cabin for the night to spend the night before I went the rest of the trip. And I remember it clearly. I got to the cabin. I had a notebook in my backpack, and I literally sat down at the kitchen table. And I wish I still had it. I don't have it anymore. But I basically wrote for 6 hours. Didn't move, just wrote. And more than likely, it's probably one of the richest things I ever wrote, which actually makes it really hard nowadays for me to write, or not nowadays, under normal conditions, to write at all. Because there was something about the bleed through of the richness of connection to life. In this case, it was a creature and a waterfall that was different than the weirdness of the socialized world. And as you all probably know, you've heard the story of the bears that didn't have their mother and came to me to be their surrogate mother, and how the human world said I couldn't do that. When I met Lily, she belonged to someone else, a woman named Anne in Longmont, Colorado. And my partner and I had just moved in there till we knew where we were going to go. And the minute I met her, she was 6 months old. She was a pistol. She basically tore out all the ladies' rose bushes and kept digging under the fence, and finally ate out the back of her brand new van. But when I met her, Anne was getting ready to take her back to the pound where she got in her. When in Colorado, if you take a dog back to the pound or cat, they get euthanized. But I already knew she was mine, and she already knew. She already knew me, and I already knew her. She was my dear. And that's pretty much the way it was. She keeps that door open for me. And why this morning I can say, she keeps that door open for me, is because for the first time since she passed over, I dreamed about her this morning. But I dreamed about her the same way I had my nose on the deer's nose, like we could be at play in an etheric territory that's ours. And I'm so grateful, because I don't do well in the socialized reality of humanity. I never have. So I found it, and the same exact thing that happened when I had my nose on that deer and suddenly could write for 6 hours because the bleed through, the visceral fragrance and tactile awareness, and the blood in you feels so alive, and the skin so velvet. It's so beautiful. And in that realm of reality, and remember, physical reality is an illusion. It's just condensed energy. So it was lovely to be with Lily. We were figuring something out in the dream. We were working different scenarios so that we could have our territory and populate it with what we wanted to populate it with. And she was still struggling with memories of her body, but we worked it out. We'll work it out again. But the beautiful thing about it, in this terrible world that humanity has gotten itself caught in, we get so purposeful, we get so caught, human beings get so caught in life having meaning, in life needing purpose. And I'm a very purpose-oriented human. But where does it come from? The richness that draws us into purpose is often lost to us. So it's just so beautiful to wake up in the hue of not being separated from my beloved. And with it came information, just like that 6-hour day that I wrote in that cabin in Virginia. I could see the beginning landscape. I could begin to have my sketch pad of my life, to begin to sketch something out that didn't have real purpose, didn't have much meaning. But in the visceral, sentient kingdom, it carried fragrance. It carried a tactile tenderness. It carried a warmth, a crystalline, bubbling sparkles in my blood. And I could write. And I wrote a group of people. If you'd like, I'll post what I wrote here after the call, after the talk. Just let me know. And it may seem like nothing. It may seem like me just trying to make a decision about my future. But it's not where it came from. It came from an etheric territory with my beloved that bled through finally into the socialized human world. And I can draw breath from there. My spirit can run free there. I can survive here. Wednesday, we have our every first Wednesday of the month. Those of us that have been exploring what connects us to life and has us exist as whole have an open call for ourselves and for the community at large, the human community. And this last Wednesday, something remarkable happened. It was the same flavor, the same tactile referencing in the human language that I experienced this morning in the etheric territory with my beloved. A group of humanity Wednesday night, California, Montana time, actually explored a landscape of a realm of reality that we found ourselves in there. None of us knew it. It isn't like you get a ticket that's written what the movie is. It's what happens in the realness, in the realness of real. It wasn't socialized. We were in a realm and we were responding to it. It called us and we called it. Chant response, response chant. The highway had opened. A gateway had opened. We couldn't have caused that. But a group of human beings did rise into the wonder of it. And over the years, we've been doing the creation exercises and working in field phenomena, and their voices could bring forward in language the same resonance that I had with Muffet, my cat, and Mickey, my dog, and the deer, and the bears, and the hummingbirds, and the blue jays, and the squirrels, and my Lily that was never limited to dog as a socialized creature. She kept the doorway open. And when she died in a creature manner, she refused to let the door shut on my mind. And I have been forced to remember, not to be able for, by the way, but to remember that our physical reality is nothing but a dream. It's an illusion. And I wondered today if I could bring to language, if I could construct human sentences. To bring forward perhaps the shock and awe of what I know to be before us as human beings. Perhaps if you think about it one way, you might be able to consider that we got stuck in a television show and thought it was real, and didn't realize that we could morph out of it and simply be the airwaves and generate shows that we loved in such a manner that we were part of them because they were more real than what we had walked into. So I think what I would like to do is try to build a few sentences. They're not really going to string together well. I have an ease with mystical language. It doesn't have to make sense because it opens doorways and highways to the greater realms of reality. In fact, making sense is a booby prize. Thwarts us, keeps us from being present to what lays beyond that. So if I was going to construct a sentence, I would be constructing it from the material of energy that carries our spirit, that was originally designed to inform our flesh, not to be caught in our flesh. If I were to design a sentence, string some words together, then it would be my prayer that it would carry the realms of the beyond that actually are no longer beyond. So I'll start with, even though I have been clear since birth that the spirit kingdom I live in is more real than the physical world I live in, that has not been how my system organizes itself. I and others have felt a great longing here in the physical world for something we couldn't find here. Sentence 1. Thank you, Elaine. It's my prayer that all of you build sentences today. Tear down the illusion. Speak as well as we can in our stilted human language these doorways, these portals, these highways that are opening now. And it's so fascinating to me to be in this company of people, of beings. Because there's many companies of humans I would not be capable of even risking or bringing forward these structures of thought. Perhaps these alchemies of speaking that just might further the territories of our etheric natures, so that that's where we can live here. It was always meant to be where we lived. It was always meant to live. Elaine calls it the space between. Good enough. Where the non-physical and the physical meet. But where the heart is not sheltered, because it has no need for sheltering. And love needs no container. And touch exists without the need for physical anchoring. Where the odor of her fur keeps the gateway open to my soul, which is the soul of all life. And I have accepted this journey. Frankly, because my beloved Jeremy, my beloved Lily, my beloved Niall aren't really interested in the door being closed between them and me. But what if we're in something that goes further? What if we're in something that we think is impossible? What if Lily's impeccable timing because it let her be completely alive until the tumor burst on her spleen for her to pass over? Not compromised in any manner. But what if there's a message we're getting? Even as I begin to try to frame a sentence, the shock and awe of the possibility of it almost makes a door slam in our face. Not mine. I'm going to work this. I want that door open. When I was a little girl, I knew something without any question, and I was in the horror of it, 24/7. That somehow whatever I'd gotten born into had separated me from myself. I didn't know what myself was. I didn't know how to describe it. I didn't know how to find it. I was lost. But there was the animals, and there was the waterfalls, and there were the rivers, and there were the sounds, and there were the textures, and there were the smells. And I knew myself lived there. But somehow the registers in my body couldn't register it anymore. I was like behind the wall. There was a glass between me and it. That I used to dream that all the time, that I couldn't get through. I could see myself, but I was not myself. And I began a journey. Many of you on this Facebook Live were part of my journey. And all of you had one thing in common. It was not okay that our self could not experience the real reality that existed here. It was just not okay. So is it possible that something beyond the extraordinary is occurring? Is it possible that this not as chubby as she was before, mystic, and her beloved companions of the etheric territories of life itself are standing strong because the conditions have changed? And what has been lost to us for such a long time might not be so lost anymore? Is it possible that the highways to heaven not Christian, not Jewish, not Muslim, have opened again. Perhaps our memory of heaven, what we've read, is an ancient memory of an etheric territory where we never had to be separate from each other again, where we could always live in our eternal nature and design our playful imaginations and play. That's why I'm so gently quiet today, because it wasn't me in my dream last night that rebuilt the system that allowed Lily and I to not be separate in that territory, and for me to come back here into the waking state still in that territory, both physical and non-physical, happening at the same time, both in the etheric partnership with my beloveds, particularly Niall, Jeremy, and Lily. Really pretty excited that there's a wedge in the door and it may not close again. It is fascinating to me. I posted on our Tapa Talk, which is a group I work with. I now wish I'd posted it on Facebook Live, but perhaps Praline and I can do that. But when the judge in the United States, right before her son was shot, which is what most people pay attention to, the last words her son said to her was, "Mother," he was down in the basement with her, "I want us to be able to talk like this all the time." Erica and her mother in Switzerland, her mother said to her, "Erica, I don't ever want to leave you." When my son Jeremy died, he did not leave. You can ask Deb Merchant, Megan Merchant, my children. When they were still young, he was in the back seat with them, in the car. They thought nothing of it. They once said to him, "Jeremy, quit tickling Josh's nose," because he was a baby. Jeremy was playing with him. But so even I, who has a active experience of not being separated from what I love after what we call human death, even I could never incorporate it into the truth of reality until Lily crossed over and had no reference point for separation. None. Just tore out the rose bushes and dug under the fence. So I'm caught in the space between. But let me tell you, I got ways. And I have beings with me. I'm not alone there. I am not alone there. And as I was on that call Wednesday, we were all in a realm calling us to play. And we were. And I have a mission, and I am not alone in that mission. Because I, who have learned to love you, never want to leave you. You know, it's such a weird word, leaving, because we think leaving means. You know how sometimes if you have children, when they go to school, or empty nest syndrome, remember that? That's an in the world experience of how our etheric natures don't follow our kids to school while we're busy washing dishes at home. We've lost a system. And you know what? We're going to get it back. And we need to get it back now. We need Erica's mother to be able to stay with her. She'll travel just like Jeremy's been gone for a long time. He's been busy. But the minute Lily crossed over and I sat in the resonant field, there was Jeremy. And there was Lily, and they were showing me things, and they were working with my broken system so that my etheric nature could become my primary and my physical nature could become my secondary. Just for a minute. Just imagine what it would be like. Because if our etheric nature, our spirit being, could become dominant, which it was always designed to be, we came here as a playground. We didn't come here to be caught in the density of mass. We came here to move in and out of mass and density. We really did. What if we're on the edge of that again? What if we're at the edge of that again? What if all the people dying across the world and all of us having to pay attention to it, whether we're denying it or not, we are having to pay attention. What if it's causing a quantum, generating a quantum event, an event horizon? What if all those people whose loved one goes into the hospital and they know now the odds will be they will never see them again, and they can't shut the door yet. It doesn't make sense to shut the door. It isn't right to be without them. What if it's forcing open a highway between the non-physical and physical realms, where our love, our desire never to be separate, our desire to love each other forever, finally wins, because it was always what existed here. This place was built by the eternal. It was not built by the temporal. What if it's beginning to restore itself here? And what if this place, this address we call the sacred space for resting courage, what if the address of the restoring the Judy matrices of Tapatalk, what if there are places that human beings can gather and say no more? You see, we've been very archaic. We have had a primitive mind set that has caused our quantum mind great trouble. Because the quantum mind of our consciousness knows we're not separate, and has the systems that lets us live it. To be able, like a gearbox, like shifting gears, to just shift between the temporal and the eternal, the spirit and the flesh, the physical, the non-physical, the sacred, the secular. So we could have multiple dimensional experiences of living. You won't forget what I've said today. your system is listening. And your etheric nature, your spirit can rebuild it. Last week there was a question, Tantra, how do we find our spirit? Give it a place. Give it a place. The topic today, before my Jeremy and my Lily decided that I needed to sort something out between here and there with them, which we will, because they don't want to be without me either. But then they're not, and confused I am. That I even have the experience of being without them is incredibly confusing on the other side. And I know I've had 19 deaths in my lifetime where I died clinically. One a year till I was 20 years, till my 20th year when I stopped having them. And it's true. It's really true. I remember one of the I did have another one. My kids, Aaron and Liana, were born. Those two kids, and I was having dental work, and they gave me too much gas. They didn't pay attention, and I died. In real terms, only for 3 or 4 seconds, my heart stopped, maybe even less. But in eternity, it was forever. It was the most beautiful forever. It was timeless time. And I went to see my kids in that spatial forever. And I remember being so bloody excited because there was no separation between me and them. It was so exquisite. It was so awesome. Shock and awe. And then they gave me adrenaline. But when I shot back in my body, or came back, my heart started beating again. It was pretty much the same as being with Lily in our territory this morning. It didn't go away. It stayed. That visceral feeling of no particle missing. Nothing missing, nothing left out. It was all there in its totality. I never lost it. But my physical system has not yet become it, had not restored its capacity. But this time, because Lily as a being doesn't have any idea about shutting doors, she's never occupied her physical body as a primary. And that's the truth. I have evidence. The doctor said to me, we are all in shock and awe that your dog lived these last 5 years, because given her heart condition, there's no way she should have lasted even a year. She also had spinal bifida. So how come she was jumping up and down and running and swimming all that time? Because her body was not her primary. Her spirit was. And then the 5 days before she left, I didn't know she was going to die, but I kept being with her like our time together was ending. So we spent lots of time together. I didn't know why. Why was not available to me. But in hindsight, it was more than that. We were securing our etheric territory. Because every time you sit down with your animal or you're out in nature, your particle field is part of the particle field of creation. and you're merging with the moon, and you're merging with the leaves, and you're merging with the landscapes and the smells and the tastes. Your particle field is immortal. That's what we were doing. We kept merging together. And has the last 4 days been hell? Absolutely. And so biological. It's the most extraordinary thing to be awake in it, to not be unconscious and not be driven unconscious by it. But I'm really clear, which is this last piece I want to say, I'm really clear it's worth it. And really bloody hard. I have a group, I have people I stay in communication with, and at one point I just said, I'm a coward. I can't do this. I was still going to do it. But the feeling of being able to do it, not there. Not there. And my particle field in my body was like broken glass shards cutting me everywhere, tearing up my heart. But I knew it was the way in. I knew the broken glass was the way in. A couple of times I felt like I was in quicksand and being pulled down, but it was made of broken glass. Teeny broken glass that you get in your foot and hurts and throbs and just creates a kind of a pain that's torture because you can't get at it. You can't relieve it. But every inch of me knew it was the way through, knows it's the way through. It's like the electrical fence that our dog Permy used to go through. We had it at 2 feet, and he'd be in shock and awe as he went through it to the other side. He loved it. He loved doing it. And then we finally made it 10 feet, 5 feet on either side, and I'd be damned if the dog didn't do it again, because he wanted to get to the other side. And if I have to go through the electromagnetic field of my own system to get a doorway open to paradise so that our systems can restore our etheric natures, our spirit systems, our eternal systems, our forever systems, which is where love lives. We created the word love as an acronym because the word is so collapsed and so associated with pain and loss. And the acronym was life opening up into the vibration of the eternal. I had no idea that my unity, my soulmate, Lily and I, that I was going to get to live that. That I am going to get to live my life opening up into the vibration of the eternal. Want to play? So the talk I was going to do today, a simple talk, turned into something much larger. It all starts with hope. Hoping it could be true. Perhaps in this conversation, hoping it could be true that we could love forever. That we never have to leave each other unless we want to. But that nothing can make us. Perhaps it lives in hope that things are changing. And that now a quantum amount of humanity doesn't want their loved ones to be lost to them. And it's forcing open a door to the eternal, and that the eternal is restoring its systems in our body, in our mind, in our emotions, and perhaps even in our world. Perhaps we can risk hoping. But hope is an alchemy. although it's been made a condition. It's an ether. It's an alchemy. It's an alchemical formula that doesn't open up into hoping that we have peace on earth, like people stop fighting. Doesn't open up into hoping that we get a meal. It goes beyond that. It goes into the territory of creation from which the physical plane came. It opens the beginning of a door to your spirit, to your ethers, to your etheric natures, and to the territories that they occupy in the eternal. And hope generates imagination. The next level. And then we risk imagining something as so. Shock and awe. And the shock and awe is because the system on the physical plane is broken. It's broken away from the systems that carry your spirit. It doesn't live long without it. Your body doesn't live long without your spirit. I could give lots of evidence of why I've lived so long. Doctors telling me I shouldn't have lived this long. 2. But the spirit keeps me alive. My spirit. And aren't some of you beginning to experience your spirit coming back online in your flesh? You absolutely are. And doesn't it sort of shock and awe you? And don't you sometimes feel the corrupted, broken glass, separated nature of the mind, the emotions, and the body? Shock and awe. But I could talk to someone I've never met. I could just tell her to give me a minute. I could feel her body and I could do an activation right in that moment. We were on WhatsApp. I don't even know her. I said, just give me a minute. And her spirit brightened in her body instantly because it was there. It had a place. And her pain body diminished almost instantly. But not to be a stick figure walking around buying groceries and filling up your day with doing and phone calls. But so the deer can put its nose on your nose. Because imagination starts to become real. The barrier is broken. The border is crossed. The illusion collapses at your feet. And separation has no place. In the call, I hope you, I don't know if Evelyn has shifted it over into the store yet. I apologize. And I'm out of it right now, busy in the incredibly demanding, compelling activity of Jeremy and Lily as conscious beings, making sure that I don't stay stuck and that I can be fully available to them again, and them me. So I have my private little operation going on here, totally generated by that which loves me and doesn't want me to feel the way I feel because it's confusing to them. It doesn't exist there where they are. So we're going to get that door open. And I hopefully can do it without dying, which is my intent. Seems stupid. Because they'd like to play with me here. But I'd love for you to listen to that call once it gets changed to the store. Maybe I'll post the link on, we'll just post the link. We'll just post the instant teleseminar link here. Because something happened in that call. It was like the deer with its nose on my nose. Only this time it was human beings. And the shock and awe of what we're opening up into. And may very possibly have. So what do you think? Do you think you could start with hope as an ether, as an alchemical activity that builds the strength, stamina, capacity of spirit, your spirit? Do you think you can nurture that? Do you think you can nurture your hope? Not for hope for things changing in the physical world, but hope that the spirit world can re-enliven the physical world with itself. That the etheric territories of unity, of love, of heaven, heaven on earth, paradise, can restore just the hope, not being the doer. You can't do anything about what's going on anyway. But the hoper, the spiritual hoper, not looking for humankind to do anything, but looking for the spirit to return to humankind. What do you think? What do you think? Do you think you would be open to building the strength, stamina, capacity for spiritual hope? Animated imagination? Yes, I have a technology, the creation exercises. Do I advise? Of course I do, but not as a method to cope with this broken system that is separate from reality, but to rebuild your own systems so that the systems of spirit, the etheric systems, the systems of consciousness, the systems of awakening, that they come back online in your mortal body, that your immortal systems come back online in your immortal nature, in your mortal nature. And then when we die, we just shed the carcass, and it can all be celebration. Honest to God, this is the border, I promise. This is the border. We're on, whether we wanted to be here or not. We didn't cause this. We're just having the opportunity to be here. Two things happened in the call that were etherically available. Something etherically became available for those of you that just came on. I'll post the instant teleseminar link, or maybe Jackie will. She'll let me know. Or Praline can, or Anne, one of you, somebody. Even if you did it now, it'd be good if you could do that. So we don't leave anything in linear time. And we create as many instant moments of now as we possibly can. Saturate the field of time with timeless time, the eternal. The cravings, the longings from never being separate from what we love. Wouldn't that be cool? And I'm saying we're at that border. And yes, is part of it being forced upon us? Of course, because it's a broken system. Do you know it is the broken system of separation? Loss is the broken system of separation. Loss of ourselves, loss of our loved ones. Thanks, Jackie. I love her so much. She lives with llamas. Up, she got it. She beat you, Jackie. It's a YouTube? I don't think it's a YouTube. Sorry, busy organizing things as I'm talking. They'll work it out. And if it's all kerfluffled, enjoy it. Come on, we're at the border. We have a quantum amount of humanity that's dying, and a quantum amount of humanity that doesn't want them to die and know it's not their time. Come on. We're like the flood waters that have slammed up against the dam that people have been protesting not to build so that the rivers could flow. And then let's just break it down. Okay, well, Praline's doing something else than Jackie. Hope. Just start with hope. But honestly, if you use your consciousness just to have hope be an etheric nature, Ann Byrne beat both of you. Ann Byrne wins. That's the Instant Teleseminar link. Then Jackie, if you'll just post it, not as a comment, but as a share, that'd be great. So the point is that we are the dam is cracking. The floodwaters. How many of you have noticed your emotions and your mind hallucinating? How many of you have noticed? Hope is first. For those of you who have loved ones on the verge of passing over, hope that the dam's going to break and we never need to be separate from them again, and they never need to be separate from us again. Because it is my belief, which I rarely use that word because it gets us in so much trouble, but it is what would be the word? What's the term? What is the term, Diane? Like educated belief? Educated belief. In other words, I have some power of my own knowing behind it, that they're waiting for us to open on our side, that they've never left their side. And are they busy? Yeah, they're busy. I've died so many times, I can tell you, you're busier there than you are here. You're just not worn out. Where do you think all my capacity comes from? Because more of me's there than here. And there is right here. It's where the deer live. It's why we talk about prana and oxygen. We say it. We say there's a pranic field here. That's heaven. We say that leaves have energy. That's etheric. This is not rocket science. It's us that got conned into thinking the solid, visual feel was real. But how come somebody can lose a leg and still feel the leg? Come on. Have the hope that your etheric nature that is in unity with all life is building its strength, stamina, capacity to exist here and there and have no need for time at all as we've known it. That's the eternal. I'm way beyond hope because I am being dominated by what loves me, that now lives in the etheric territory. But I wake up with Lily curled up against my legs until I remember from my stupid, limited mind she's not supposed to be there. But until I do, I'm in the etheric territory and she's right there. Niall, after he passed over, it was nothing. It was nothing, but I'd had longer periods of time without him physically, so it was easier. It was nothing to wake up and feel him like he sits with his legs curled, these gigantic legs curled up against him, the corner of my bed, and we'd be chatting before I came all the way awake. Because we were limited until now, because we couldn't stay in the etheric territories here. Something will happen to you when you listen to that call on Wednesday, something beautiful. something wonderful. And you may not understand what I'm saying, but in the beginning of the call, just as ancient Elaine will know, Siobhan will know, Anne will know, Anne and Anne. Some of you will know. And some of you that aren't hanging in the collective group we're in right now. But this collective group is doing it for everyone. We're doing it for everybody. We're a condensed period of time people that are busy for a condensed period of time on behalf of all life. But in the beginning, I heard it instantly when Jim said, what if we're bringing to bear in this call? What if the invitation to an ether, to a realm, to a landscape, to a territory? What is the invitation? What if we're inviting unity? And it accepted the invitation. And you can hear it through the entire call. And towards the end of the call, which might not have been as notable, but remember, I live with a consciousness that has a complete reference point in the etheric territories, multiple reference points, multiple engagements. So it's not lost to me. But then Myra and Hibiscus, the last ones to call, Tasha in between, and others. Myra used the word borderland. And I had known we were at the border, very much like what I've said, that it's like all of us washed up against the dam, and we need to stay there. I know it hurts. I know mental thinking can go crazy. I know the emotions can go wild. So for me, my mantra was don't leave the border. But then Mara said borderland. And something beyond my mental perception became very real. And this morning I thought to myself when Lily and I were in our dream, in our territory together, I went, oh my God, this is a borderland. It's a temporary borderland where we can begin to build our strength, stamina, and capacity for being with each other again without the need of physical form. That's what pinged me. That's what pinged me when Mara used the phrase borderland. Because Lily found a way to reach me through a dream. But the dream was a territory. It was a landscape. It was a realm. It was a borderland. And I think the borderland is like temporary until we can get the territory reclaimed of both physical and non-physical, both eternal and temporal, both spirit and flesh. Don't some of you find this amazing? How many years have I been in this conversation with you? How many years? How many years? Do you remember the first time I said it? That the meta point is where the spirit and flesh, eternal and temporal, sacral and secular, physical and non-physical, mortal and immortal, exist as one. And here we are at the border. And what's being born out of that border? Yes, the borderland, I think, is a citadel, and most people don't know what that is. I wrote Shama and I said, I think heaven was once a citadel that got corrupted, got broken away from us, got to be a place we could never go. And we know that's true because Christians and Arabs and Jews are biting each other's asses and anybody else's they can find. So this time, we have our borderland. We can take care of that, can't we? We can make sure it's never corrupted. Why? Because we'll populate it with our eternalness. We'll stay on watch. It'll give us something to do. I really mean it. When you're dead, you have so much more to do. But there's no problem because you have everything you need and nothing missing. You can do everything. So that word, when Myra said borderland, that's why this conversation we had on Wednesday was alchemical. Because it elicited an activation of the etheric realms of things. And now Lily and I, we will figure out our borderland until we can lose the illusion of separation completely. Completely. Isn't that the goal? To lose any capacity for loss or separation? Isn't that what we mean when we say the ability to be unencumbered by the illusion? But the most shock and awe of it is that we're there. Humanity has arrived at the border of separation. And I do think that borderlands will rise from this. I do think that each of you, perhaps for Linda and Erica, perhaps a borderland for their mothers and them to stay together in dream time, or in imagination, or in hope. Don't make it too solid. The particle field is not solid. It's ephemeral. Practice ephemerality. I just made up that word. So Lily and I and Jeremy and Niall, thank you. They're all with me right now. Why? Because I trust my imagination. I trust my hope. Because it becomes real. Because it's just the lower frequency invitations of the higher frequencies of reality. Lower is not bad. It's just stairways to the stars, not the stars themselves. I love you. I cannot thank all of you enough for how you held my body and held my broken heart so that it could find its way out of the darkness into the light. I also want to complete this call because I know Siobhan and Anne and Elaine, and I think a couple of others are on this call. Remember, I made a promise to Emer. My promise to Emer was that I'd find the door for her to come back. Ponder that. Namaste.